Okay, welcome everyone back to another wonderful episode of Cult Stuff and Chill. So, right before we started filming, Ashley's like, "Oh, have you heard about the Madeleine McCann case lately? It looks like they solved it." And I was like, "Stop, hold it, save it for the podcast." So, please enlighten me. What are the details here?
Yeah, so they basically found this guy who was convicted of sexually assaulting a 70-something-year-old woman. And they managed to tie him through what they consider irrefutable evidence to the Madeleine McCann case. I know that there's been a little bit of investigation, like at some places he used to live, where they actually excavated and looked for remains of people. But I read two or three articles at 2 a.m. this morning, so that's about all the information that I have. But yeah, they say, and I think it's German, the German court has found a guy who's a German national who
Oh.
they think they might be able to convict of it. It sounds like they're pretty certain that it's going to go through.
Dang. Okay, so I was actually, as always, on TikTok recently. And there was this person that had filmed these two people out in the wild. They were on vacation in Europe somewhere, I think Portugal. But it was this dude that looked remarkably similar to one of the police sketches from Madeleine McCann's case with a girl that looked to be about Madeleine's age. And so their speculation was this is the guy that kidnapped Madeleine and she's now alive and living with this dude. So obviously that's probably not the case. But it was kind of compelling because he looked a lot like the sketch, and also the girl looked a lot like it could be Madeleine but older, but I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah, from the sounds of this article, it kind of sounds like she might have had immediately been killed or kept for a short amount of time. But they haven't really given too much information on it yet. Obviously, like I said, I haven't done a huge deep dive on it, so maybe we'll talk about that in next week's episode.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they found her alive, but unfortunately the case is most of the time that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Also, this might get cut. we should probably cut this, but I don't know if it's better or worse that it was immediate, because imagine the mental torture of being someone's hostage for that many years.
Well, I mean, a lot of people get Stockholm syndrome, though.
True.
And so it's just they're conditioned to think it's okay, especially at that young of an age. If she were still alive, she would probably be fine with it. That's what she's grown up with.
True. She would probably just think that she had been adopted out or something, honestly.
Yeah. I don't know. I remember, when I was that age. I remember stuff from when I was, a baby.
The earliest memory I have was when my mom was having my brother. So I would have been 2, maybe 1.5. But we had gone to Walmart to pick out Mom a present because she was giving birth. And it was these pink acrylic earrings, very 90s from Walmart. And me and my sister got her these earrings. And then we accidentally dropped them down the heating vent at our house because we were, at home chilling while Mom was giving birth. And so then instead we went and got her a bag of Cheetos because we dropped the earrings down the vent. And I don't know if I've just falsely made up that memory in my brain or if that actually happened, but it feels very vivid to me that we got our pink earrings and then lost them and then got our Cheetos instead.
I think my earliest memory was from, this is gonna sound sus, but I remember being in a baby carrier and being carried into my great grandma's old house, which she had when I was she sold that I think when I was 7 or 8 months old. But I remember going in there and just being I don't want to fucking be here. I want to take a nap. And it was everybody was really happy to see me, and I was just get the fuck away from me.
Oh,
I was
no.
Okay, I'm gonna go put her down in the back bedroom, and she carried me, because I described it to my aunt. She's oh yeah, that was Grandma Russell's house before she moved out to her new one. But yeah, they carried me into the back bedroom, and then it just goes fuzzy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't super detailed, but it was
That might be a fun one to ask. So listeners, if you hear this part of the podcast, DM us what your earliest childhood memory is. Because I'm genuinely just very curious. DM us that on Instagram and maybe we'll read them out at the top of the episode next week. Also, you know what really fascinates me is past life stories. I've been seeing a lot of this one kid in particular on TikTok, duh, of course, because what else do I do but spend my days on TikTok? But he like remember his past life, and so his mom was taking him through this like museum exhibit, and he sees his castle. He's like, I used to live there, and then he looks at his mom. Now I live in a small house with you, and it's like the shade from this child. It is so funny, and like the mom's like, oh, thanks, and then he just like continues talking about the story, and they're. Also, disclaimer, listeners, it's storming out here, so you might have just heard that thunder in the background. So sorry, but can't help it. Mother Nature has other plans for me today.
Yeah, we really need to do like the past life regression stuff again.
Yeah.
Because we've done it a few times, or I've done it a few times. Devin, you've done it like once, haven't you?
Yeah.
I feel like that time for you was like traumatic, so you never did it again.
And you know, I don't even know that I fully like buy into it, but I think when you get to a point where you're meditating and you're just like so focusing on, you know, your own thoughts, and you're just sitting there, like the way I did it was I laid in bed, like I got all nice and cozy, put on an eye mask and earphones, so like all you're listening to is that meditation track or whatever, and you're not using your other senses at all. And so I don't know if your brain at that point just starts to like make things up, but it was like, it wasn't fun for me. If it was actually my past life and not just something my brain was like making up, it was a little sad, and I don't know that I want to try it again.
Yeah, because I did it, and like there was one that was kind of traumatic, but the rest of them that I've done so far have been fine.
Yeah.
Like boring. Although I feel like, and this is totally under the assumption that it is real, or, you know, if you don't believe in it, you don't have to. But, like, I feel like the last life that I had was not good because, like, I have always been traumatically scared of, like, fireworks. Like, I've had firework PTSD where I just, like, cannot do anything with fireworks. Like, thunder's okay. Like, gunshots, fine. But fireworks. So I feel like I probably got blown up in, like, my last past life. And
Maybe you were in Chernobyl.
Maybe.
Was that yeah, that was an explosion. It wasn't just radiation leaks.
Yeah, no, it was like it was a big explosion.
Damn.
Yeah. You haven't seen the HBO show of Chernobyl?
I haven't. I want to watch it, but as soon as Game of Thrones was over, we canceled our HBO subscription, so I haven't watched it yet.
You gotta watch it.
I know. I'm gonna get HBO back because they're doing that prequel series from like the Targaryen household's perspective. So I'm definitely gonna get HBO back as soon as that comes back. Also, hey, DM us your thoughts on the Game of Thrones series finale. And spoiler alert, it's gonna be a wrong answer if you didn't hate it.
Yeah, it was garbage.
It was garbage.
Well, so my partner was on Reddit, like, before that season had even started, and somebody had, like, leaked all the details of the season. I was like, if that happens, I will actually, like, be pissed. And it was like probably somebody that worked on the production, and so all of it came true, and I was just like,
they really did Danny's character arc dirty. They fucked that up so bad. I want it to be like Dexter, where they realize 10 years later how badly they fucked up, and they're like, okay, we need to make an 11th season to correct our error. Was it 10 seasons of Game of Thrones? I think I might have just made that up.
I thought it was 8.
Yeah. I think it's 8. So maybe they'll come back with a 9th season a decade from now and be like, we're sorry. We know we fucked up. Let me fix it for you. Yeah. Like, even just give us a movie, just like 1 2-hour long movie to like correct the mistakes from the last episode. Anyway, should we get into our stories for the week?
Yeah.
All right. Take it away, Ashlee. Give me a story that'll wipe away the pain and memories of Game of Thrones.
I mean, it's not going to wipe away the pain, but mine's really sad this week. I didn't tell you.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's what I needed, is just to feel my sadness over Game of Thrones. So give it to me, man.
So my story starts with John List, who was born to German-American parents, John Frederick List and Alma Barbara Florence List in Bay City, Michigan on September 17th, 1925. which makes him a Virgo.
Imagine that.
His father was a devout Lutheran and Sunday school teacher, something that John would emulate later in his life. Sources say that John wasn't particularly close to his father and that he had been more of a traditional and distant father who imparted his austere teachings onto his son. However, John was very close to his mother, Alma, and Alma doted on her beloved son, including lending him money whenever he needed it. In 1943, at the height of World War II, John enlisted as a laboratory technician in the U.S. Army. He eventually went on to get his bachelor's degree in business administration with a master's degree in accounting while remaining tied to the military through ROTC. Now, in 1950, as the Korean War was just getting into full swing, John was recalled into the service of the military, and while on his second tour of duty, he met a lonely widow named Helen Morris Taylor. Helen and John dated for a while, and allegedly she basically manipulated him into marriage and was like, hey, I'm pregnant with your baby. We should probably get married before this becomes a whole thing. And so in 1951, they actually got married and moved to California. Spoiler alert, she wasn't actually pregnant. She just told him that. She did have a daughter from a previous marriage whose name was Barbara, who's not really integral to the story. Barbara kind of moved out and got married before any of the main part of the story went down. So when John and Helen moved to California, he was assigned to the Finance Corps. After his second tour of duty was completed, he went on to move around the U.S. and work for many different types of businesses, from banks to factories, just bopping around where he could find work. And while working in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Helen and John had 3 children, a daughter named Patricia and 2 sons, Frederick and John Jr. However, beneath the perfect exterior of an all-American family, there were cracks starting to form. For starters, his marriage to Helen was tumultuous at best. Helen, an alcoholic, had also been hiding the fact that she had contracted syphilis from her first marriage.
Oh, no.
Of which the disease was now in the tertiary stage. And tertiary stage of syphilis is basically like you can't pass it on to any of your partners or your children. But you do start to suffer from the debilitating effects it can cause to many different systems of the body, including the brain and the eyes, which were like mainly what was hitting her.
Ugh.
So she was becoming more and more mentally unstable because of the syphilis. Helen also frequently mocked John about his performance in the bedroom and would often call him out in public about it. She said that her first husband, the one who had given her syphilis, was basically like a sex god, and John was merely just mediocre. Which, can you imagine?
I mean, if he was a sex god, he was probably getting around, so that would explain the syphilis.
But also, like, your wife that manipulated you into marrying her is just like...
You got a small PP.
John was having a hard time holding down a long-term job at this time as well. Many people in that era like found a company and they worked for it basically forever. However, John was following the money around, much like a millennial would today. His coworkers would describe him as aloof and not really a people person. Today, he would probably be diagnosed as being like on the spectrum, but back then, society didn't really make accommodations. Also, a devout Lutheran and military man, John chose to raise his children with an iron fist and was becoming very discouraged with his children who were resistant to his authoritarian parenting style. Things were starting to look up in 1965 when eventually John did accept a job as a vice president and comptroller at a bank in New Jersey, and the entire family, plus his aging mother, moved into a massive 19-room Victorian mansion called Breeze Knoll in Westfield, New Jersey.
Damn, go off.
To everyone outside the family, it would appear that this new page in the List family history was a huge turnaround for them, but in reality, John had asked his mother for a huge loan to help him afford such an extravagant house in the first place. He was working for the bank for a while, but eventually the branch was shut down and he lost his job. So rather than admit failure, John clammed up. He bottled up his emotions. He did not tell anybody about losing his job and instead chose to get up and go to work every day, which meant that he would go to the train station and like either sit and read or he would just like train hop. He did manage to find a few lower paying jobs, but eventually was fired from most of those.
Oh.
He started skimming money from his mother's bank accounts in order to pay for the massive mortgage. His kids were also becoming more and more rebellious, which was kind of part of the 1970s culture of like increased individuality and autonomy. It wasn't enough to just fit into the mold anymore. Like people wanted to be themselves. His daughter Patricia was especially troublesome and had been rumored to be dabbling in witchcraft and marijuana, and she had expressed a desire to become an actress, of which John did not tolerate any of that.
She sounds like she was pretty cool, honestly.
She seems like she was cool.
Yeah, I fuck with that.
He had also asked his children to get jobs to teach them about fiscal responsibility, but in reality, he was just taking their money to like help subsidize, their massive mortgage. In 1971, John had finally run out of options and was on the track to declaring bankruptcy. Now, for a devout Lutheran, a daddy's boy like John, he wasn't really a daddy's boy, but he did listen to his dad a lot. But his dad had said and constantly taught him that poverty was considered a sin and that was below them as good Lutheran people.
That's very good Christian values.
Yeah. To accept charity or welfare was sinful, according to him. So it's like that was not an option for John. So at this point, John's kids and his wife, they don't respect him. And his wife was becoming increasingly unstable, and he'd even stopped going to church, which for John was just like completely unthinkable and unforgivable. So simply, he had run out of options. He was at his breaking point, and suicide wasn't even an option because he considered that a bigger sin than anything else. So what is a man in John's situation to do? Some might say, just go declare bankruptcy. It'll be fine. No. John had a religious epiphany. He decided that the only way to save his family from the social humiliation and religious persecution of poverty was to flatline them. All of them.
No. John. Baby, no.
He decided that now was the perfect time to do it because he could still save his family's souls before they reached a point of no return. And they became too corrupted and couldn't go to heaven, basically. Also, without the burden of his 5 family members and the crippling mortgage of his spacious mansion, he could save some scratch and avoid bankruptcy by just skipping town and picking up a new identity.
Oh my God, this man. I don't follow the logic, John. Please explain.
I don't think there is much.
I don't feel like we're going to get an explanation from him, but oh my God.
So, on the morning of November 9th, 1971, John set his meticulous plans into motion. After his kids had gotten on the bus to go to school, he crept up behind Helen, who was sitting in the breakfast nook, and shot her in the side of the head. He tossed her body on a sleeping bag, dragged her in the grand ballroom of the estate, and laid her out underneath the extravagant stained glass skylight, which will be an important plot point later. So once he had confirmed the kill, he went up to his mother's suite, greets her with a kiss, says, "Hey, Mama, good morning," puts the gun up to her left temple, and shoots her right above her left eye. Oh. Now, he had plans to drag her also down to the ballroom, but she was too heavy, so he just left her up in her suite and threw a towel over her head.
Oof, yikes. At least it wasn't like Gilbert Grape where he just like lit the whole house on fire.
Well, maybe.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Well, fuck. Keep going. Oh, no.
So now that he had time to kill, he cleaned up the surprising amount of blood in the breakfast nook, which are his words, and completed the administrative parts of his plan, which included writing notes, calling his kids' teachers, his boss, his children's bosses, and other people in the community that might ask of their whereabouts, and basically just told them, hey, we're going on an extended trip to go care for one of our relatives in North Carolina, so we're going to be gone. We don't know how long. Basically just making an alibi so the bodies wouldn't be discovered right away. He went to the post office to mail the letters. He also had them stop delivering mail to the house. He arranged to have the milk and newspaper delivery stopped as well. Lastly, he cashed a savings bond his mother had been saving for the amount of $2,000 and closed out both his and his mother's bank accounts at the bank. At this point, John went home, made himself a little Sammy, and waited. Once Freddie, who at this time was 13, and Patricia, who was 16, came home from school, He shot both of them in the back of the head and then drug their bodies into his makeshift morgue in the ballroom.
Oh, no.
He then cleaned up a little bit, left home, drove out to the high school to watch his middle child, John Jr., who was 15, play his soccer game, and drove John Jr. home. He got John Jr. home. John Jr., it's not known exactly what happened, but John Jr. did resist him. He freaked out a little bit. He's like, what the fuck is going on, man?
Yeah. He saw his fucking family murdered in the ballroom. Jesus Christ, it's like Clue.
Well, I don't think he saw that directly. I think he just walked in and might have seen some blood, and he was like, oh, fuck, what? So it is known that John Jr. resisted him, so he shot John Jr. multiple times. Eventually, he also killed John Jr. John Sr., he's got all his families. He's got them in the makeshift morgue up in the ballroom. And he turned the ballroom radio to a religious station or a classical station. People say both. He wrote a 5-page letter to his pastor about the evils of the world corrupting his family. So he did what he had to do to save their souls before it was too late. He cleaned up real good. He went around, collected all of his photos from like the family photographs, and so they couldn't identify him. He turned the air conditioner down like super low so the bodies wouldn't decompose too fast. And then he packed up and like got the hell out of Dodge, just left.
So, okay. As fucking psychotic and awful as this man is, you have to give him credit for the amount of detail in the planning. Mm-hmm. Because, I don't know, it seems like he really had an actually kind of a good plan. But I'm curious to see. I know he gets busted, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about this. But, like, that's a lot of good planning that he did.
Well, and that kind of plays into part of the defense later on, too. So, obviously, he's very meticulous. You know, he's an army man. Usually, like, military men are kind of, like, tidy and clean and, you know, because it's trained into them. You know, he's also religious, kind of strict. He's also got already kind of predisposition to order, meticulous, kind of being emotionless and aloof. So that's why they think that he was able to do this with so little emotion put into this at all. It's just like a very methodical, almost machine-like way that he went about doing this. So,
wow.
He gets the hell out of Dodge. He's gone. He leaves. The most that they're able to find of him is the family car at the JFK airport. That's where that trail goes cold. They didn't find any records of him actually flying out. Now, because this family was already reclusive, he had written all those letters and basically put everybody off the trail for a while. The murders were not actually discovered until a month later on December 7th.
Holy cow.
And the only reason that they discovered it was because some concerned neighbors noticed that the lights in the house were going out one by one. So he had, like, turned on all the lights before he left, and then, like, the light bulbs were burning out, and they're like, that's fucking weird. So they called the police, had them do a welfare check, and the police had to, like, climb in through a basement window to get into the house, and they discovered the bodies of the family in the ballroom on the sleeping bags. They were all in sleeping bags. That's how he had arranged them. And it did take them a little bit to find his mom upstairs, though.
Yikes.
They do this investigation. They find the note, obviously. So they're like, okay, we know it's him. Basically initiate a nationwide manhunt. The murders had received nationwide attention because Westfield, New Jersey was sort of a quiet, like, perfect, very, East Coast town. They get hundreds of tips and leads. However, this wasn't enough, and the case goes cold for, like, 18 years. Alma, John's mother, was flown back to Michigan and buried. Helen and the kids were buried in Westfield. The saddest part about all of this is that the extravagant stained glass skylight in the ballroom was actually suspected of being a Tiffany original worth at least $100,000 at the time, which would be like $600,000 of today's money.
So they could have sold that off and been out of all of this financial mess. Oh, good Lord.
Like, he could have paid off not only the house, but had some left over. Like, he would have been set for a while.
Yikes.
So, like, really, this incredibly tragic event didn't have to happen. And a few months later, in August of 1972, the mansion actually burned to the ground in what the police suspected to be arson.
Is the theory that he came back and burned it down?
Either that or someone from the neighborhood did. Now, this neighborhood, though, Westfield neighborhood is actually the same neighborhood as the Watcher stalker case. So my crazy conspiracy theory is that the Watcher did it.
Okay, I like that better anyway. I hope John fucked off and never came back, but we know that he comes back in some capacity.
That's actually how I got on it, because I was like watching something about the Watcher, and they're like, if this neighborhood sounds familiar, it's because of it's the same as the murder of the List family. And I was like, oh shit, I know exactly what that is.
Oh my god, those poor people's property values probably fucking plummeted. Have you seen, okay, again, sorry, third time referencing TikTok. I keep seeing these videos, and I know they're jokes of people that are like, in areas that are close to being gentrified, and they're like, you want to know how I keep my property value low? And then they like put their arm out the window with a gun and just like shoot off a few rounds and then just like go about their business.
I have seen that, and I think somebody's been doing that around here, because like,
really?
I'm pretty sure that I heard gunshots yesterday and then just heard like people yelling, but never any like police sirens or anything.
Wow.
And obviously I wasn't like fucked enough to actually go and check it out. I was just like, I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah. Keeps the rent low.
Fun fact, also in 1972, the FBI proposed List as a suspect in the D.B. Cooper air piracy case, which happened just 2 weeks after the murders, due to the timing of the crime and the uncanny resemblance of John to the composite sketches, and the fact that John, already a man on the run, with nothing to lose, could afford to make such a ballsy move.
Mm-hmm.
However, later, when they did catch up with him, John denied any involvement with that case, which is kind of sort of a bummer, because I really wanted that to be, like, just...
Right? The icing on the cake.
Yeah. Like, sure, you murdered your whole family, but can you at least, like, do something cool?
Yeah, at least hijack a plane or two. Shit.
At this point, like I said, the trail had been cold on John for about 18 years. That is, until America's Most Wanted did an episode on John List at the special recommendation of John Walsh. Walsh, infuriated by John brutally murdering his whole family, especially the children, because like John Walsh obviously has a soft spot for murdered children.
Yeah.
He actually privately contracted and paid for a forensic sculptor named Frank Bender to create an age-progressed forensic bust of List using photos of John that they did manage to find, John's parents, and information from a forensic psychologist to get a detailed psychological profile of List. So he created the bust, but something was missing. Something that he knew would be a defining feature for people that knew the aged List in real life. And if this one detail was wrong, it could make or break this case, basically. So Frank went out and scoured thrift stores for the perfect pair of thick-framed black conservative glasses. Frank and the psychologist that he had worked with had said basically that John was a traditionalist as far as the style of the glasses went, and that he would subconsciously want to hide from what he had done by having these thick black frames. Mm-hmm. So it was like very much like a security blanket for him. So Frank found the perfect pair of glasses. He slapped them on the bust, and the case aired on America's Most Wanted on May 21st, 1989. When it aired, Denver, Colorado true crime fans Wanda Flaherty and her daughter Eva just happened to be watching that night and discovered that the forensic bust of John List and the description of him matched their former neighbor Bob Clark to a T. And Bob was soft-spoken, he wore a suit, he was an accountant, a devout Lutheran, and, most importantly, he wore thick-frame black glasses identical to the ones on the bust.
John, you're busted!
Within less than 2 weeks, the FBI tracked down Bob Clark in Richmond, Virginia, arrested him, and they questioned him. Spoiler alert, Bob Clark was John List. So John had gotten his new identity. He had moved around a bunch, finding work, kind of like he had been before, but he didn't, he wasn't tethered to his family. And he eventually remarried before settling down in Richmond. Bob Clark denied that he was John List for a few weeks, but in 1990, when faced with the undeniable evidence found at the crime scene, and after his identity had been confirmed with his fingerprints via his military records, he finally broke down and admitted his true identity and confessed to the crimes. He did not, however, cry or show really any emotion about the deaths of his family and had absolutely no remorse, even at that point in time. He wasn't like, oh yeah, I was just in a really tough place, I fucked up. He's just like, yeah, I killed my whole family.
Oh my god, what a shitbag.
During his trial, he was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, which the defense argued caused him to only see and obsess over one viable option for his family, which was murder.
I don't know. He must have had some sort of like personality disorder that just caused him to like not be able to rationally think of other options for this.
Well, they said like it was obsessive compulsive personality disorder, but it was like, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, so I can only speculate.
Yeah.
But like from the other things that were going on, it just kind of seemed like there was more going on than just OCD, or maybe it was severe OCD, or who knows. They also diagnosed him with PTSD from his time in service, which this was all being used as an argument for the defense. However, due to the insurmountable evidence, he lost, and in 1990 was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder, and the judge really threw the book at him and sentenced John to 5 consecutive terms of life imprisonment, which was like the maximum that he could be sentenced to, which he served until he died of pneumonia at the age of 82 on March 21st, 2008. And so that's kind of where my story ends. But it's just like, dude, what the fuck?
God, yeah. Imagine like oh my God, that's just crazy. Like to have the only option in your brain is like, well, I'm poor and broke, so the only thing I can rationally do is murder my entire family, create a new persona, and live an entirely new life. Like that. His poor kids.
He could have even pulled like the Black Dahlia thing where he just like fucking left. He didn't have to kill anybody.
Yeah, he could have just went out for a pack of cigarettes and never came home. Like,
yeah. And at like, I don't know. Also, like, why are men like just?
Why are men? Why is it always the men? Remember, folks, the person that you marry is statistically the most likely person to murder you. And it's most of the time the husband murdering the wife. So, ladies, choose your partners carefully. Okay. So, Ashlee, you've known me for over a decade now. So, I want to give you a friendship. Yeah, seriously. We met when we were 18. So, I want to give you a friendship quiz really quick. What is, like, existential dread aside, like, I'm talking physical items, what am I most afraid of?
Butterflies and moths.
Yes.
And you're specifically afraid of them flying into your ear.
Exactly, yes. So, listeners, to know me on a personal level is to know that information, and that's like my number one fear is moths and butterflies. Like, I fucking hate them. I think so. A lot of people think they're really beautiful, but I actually know the truth, and it's that they are just big ass bugs, and they're lurking in your garden, and they're around your porch light, and they're just wearing this like pretty bug disguise, and they're just waiting to fly into your ear. They just like fly very erratically, and they get trapped in your ear canal, and they chew holes through your clothes. Honestly, they're a menace to society, and they need to be stopped. I fucking hate moths and butterflies. That being said, today I am going to confront my fear, and we are going to talk about, honestly, the most horrifying cryptid that I can imagine, and that is the Mothman. So, is the Mothman the product of a local population's just like collective, overactive imagination? Or is he an evil monster risen to terrorize the area based on a Native American curse? Today, we are going to dive into this, and honestly, who knows the truth here? Nobody. But he's scary, and he's spooky, and we're going to talk about him. The story of Mothman, he originates in the West Virginia town called Point Pleasant. And it's a rural community. It's less than 5,000 people, and it lies kind of on the confluence of 2 rivers. It's basically like major blue-collar, small-town vibes here. And really, to get a full story on my guy here, we need to have like a little bit of a history lesson on the town itself. And to be honest, even without the Mothman, this town's history is kind of creepy. Basically, the origin of how this town came to be is kind of a bloody, messy situation. But prior to it becoming colonized by European settlers, obviously this land was Native American territory. However, due to Native American folklore that pertains to bad omens surrounding lands that sit where waters mingled, The area tribes really tended to avoid the area because it was allegedly just cursed to begin with, just bad luck to settle there. Unfortunately, as the white settlers started to move west and kind of encroach on their territory, they eventually had to stand their ground in this area. And unfortunately, they already knew this area was bad fucking news, but they were forced to defend it because white people decided to come in and fucking ruin it. So, in October of 1774, the Shawnee and the Mingo tribes of the area, they banded together to defend their territory against an invading Virginian militia in what is now known as the Battle of Point Pleasant. So the fight was really brutal, and unfortunately the Shawnee and Mingo tribes were eventually outgunned, and they were forced to retreat. So now the Native American warriors that were led by Shawnee chief, known to the Virginians as Chief Cornstalk, upon seeing all of his warriors, how wounded they were and having lost so many lives, they brokered a peace treaty that would last for the next 3 years. Chief Cornstalk, he was renowned as a great warrior, and he'd gained the respect of white men during the battle, and they actually regarded him as a really badass warrior, 10 out of 10, military commander. They thought he was just the shit. So over the next 3 years, Cornstalk would actually make diplomatic visits to the white settlers at the newly built Fort Randolph in the area where that battle had been fought. However, as the white settlers historically did in the United States, they got tired of sharing, and during one of these diplomatic visits, Cornstalk and his 3 sons were taken hostage and they were murdered by the soldiers. The legend is told that in his dying breath, Chief Cornstalk put a curse on the town of Point Pleasant that would last for 200 years. The town alleges that Native American bodies are still buried throughout the area, and actually there is a well-known mass grave site located somewhere within a local wildlife area that's just outside of the town's boundaries. So all of that being said, after that alleged curse of Chief Cornstalk, the town does face a pretty good string of bad luck over the next 200 years. The first account we have is in the 1880s. And at this point, an entire city block of the downtown was burnt to the ground. Then, 4 times between the years of 1913 and 1937, the Ohio River actually overflowed its banks, and this actually results in catastrophic flooding to the area. And during this period of time, actually, we get a little spoiler of the stories to come. So during this period of time, a mysterious Birdman starts to circulate throughout the community. And this creature is described to have a bird-like body with a 12-foot wingspan and the head of a man. So some more shitty things that happened in Point Pleasant. 2 planes crashed in the area, one of which was the Southern Airways plane that crashed and killed the entire Marshall University football team. So all total, 75 people died. A freight train also derails and spills toxic chemicals into the city's water supply. And then in 1967, the bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio kills 46 people when it collapses and plunges all of their vehicles into the river. So all of that being said, let's get into the real reason we're here today, and that is the myth, the legend, the Mothman himself. So, Mothman. It's really not until 1966 that the sightings of Mothman began to occur in Point Pleasant and then the surrounding areas, and it terrorizes the citizens of this area for 13 solid months. The first notable sighting happens in November of 1966, and it's then when 5 gravediggers, they're out late one evening digging graves like you do, and these 5 men, they claim to have seen what they described as a man with wings gliding over their heads in the surrounding wildlife area. One of these witnesses said that the mysterious figure was flying through the trees and was only visible for about a minute or so, and it didn't bother them or anything. He didn't come and terrorize them personally. They just happened to have seen this weird winged figure. So this was reported on in the local newspaper. It must have been a fucking slow news week, which is incredible because I think we were fighting a war at this point in time. But they reported that these gravediggers saw a weird creature, and that was in the newspaper. But 3 days later is where things really start to get spicy and Mothman starts to become local legend. So November 15th of 1966, two young couples named Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Stephen and Mary Malik were driving around near Point Pleasant. And in the area that they were driving, it was actually a decommissioned munitions plant known to locals as the TNT area. It's on this stretch of road near this munitions plant where they spotted what looked like a man with large wings. And he was just like chilling right in the middle of the road. Like they come to a complete stop. They're like, the fuck is that? So imagine in your brain, it's like deer in the headlights type of situation happening, except for it's like a very large 6 to 7 foot monster with huge ass wings. So they described him as being very tall, at least a 12-foot wingspan, and having glowing red eyes that were just like fucking huge. So they said the eyes were like 2 inches in diameter and then 6 inches apart. So like not placed in a human orientation on the face. Like these eyeballs, they were large. They were huge. Given that, they weren't able to make out any sort of discernible human features on the face because these eyes were glowing red. My assumption is that it was like they could see the red glowing, but it kind of like the light blurred out the features of the face, so they weren't able to really see anything. As their car comes closer to this creature, it starts to kind of like shy away from being actually caught in their headlights directly. The couples, they're obviously fucking freaked out, so they speed away to get away from it because obviously, like, what else do you do? But just like regular size moths, this thing is a fucking menace, and it wants to watch you suffer. So shortly after speeding away, they're traveling along Route 62 and they spot this thing again, except for this time it's not in the road. It's fucking following them. It's chasing their car. Probably because he wanted to bury himself like deeply in their ear canals. I can imagine he's just looking for a cozy place to sleep and he's seeing 4 sets of ears perfectly ripe for the picking. That is my guess and my theory on why. Anyway, they claim that they couldn't shake this creature, like, even when they reached speeds of 100 miles per hour. And fun fact, this stretch of road, actually, they were out there drag racing with friends, so they had, like, a fast car. They weren't in, like, a big-ass Model T. They were moving quick. They were going 100 miles an hour, and they did mention, however, that even though he was, like, incredibly fast in the air, obviously he was keeping up with them, and they were speeding, like, really fast, that he moved really clumsily on the ground. So eventually, although, like we said, he's super fast, they are able to get away. The creature relents, fucks off back to the woods, whatever. But allegedly, there were scratch marks on the roof of their car and probably in their hearts as well because they're fucking traumatized at this point. So the group, they're obviously shaken by their experience and they drive straight to the sheriff's office to file a report around 2 a.m. that day. So I don't know if you would also do that, but I can't imagine, like, I saw a big fucking winged creature in the air, so let me report it to the police.
I don't know that I reported to the police, but I feel like I'd probably try to fight it. Like, given my track record,
you'd be
I'd
out
rip
there
that
with,
machete.
Mm-hmm. You'd be out there with
the machete out, waving it around, be like, "Come and get me, motherfucker!"
Mm-hmm. I just don't know what, like, they would expect the law enforcement officials to do about a large winged monster. They can't arrest him.
Maybe they thought it was like a wild animal or something. Although, like, how do you explain, like, oh yeah, there's this wild thing flying after us at speeds of 100 miles an hour and it's also the size of a man, like...
Yeah, with glowing red eyes. I don't quite understand that, but that's what they do. They go to the sheriff's department, they report this. And so, actually, law enforcement, they immediately go out to the area, the TNT area, to investigate. But obviously, clearly, no evidence is found to support that there was, like, this big, large creature. Because Mothman is too smart for them. So, from this point, the local rumors, they really start to circulate about this big bird chasing cars on that same stretch of road near the TNT area. And locals start to speculate that the creature is actually living in the abandoned munitions plant. And they argue for one building in this plant in particular because they say that in all the other buildings, there's a shitload of pigeons living. However, in this building, no. So they think that the Mothman is living in there, or they haven't named him the Mothman yet, but they think this large creature is living in this abandoned building at the munitions plant. So very sus because there's no pigeons. It's also worth mentioning that these munitions buildings were at one point, of course, a top secret government facility. because, of course they are, because we're talking about a weird conspiracy theory. So there needs to be, top secret government involvement, obviously. So locals actually say, when they're talking about this munitions plant, that when they're working at the facility, or when they used to work at the facility, I believe it was during World War II that it really was popping off, that they would get bussed in on school buses and all the windows on the buses would be blacked out because they didn't want them to see all the going-ons at this munitions plant. So I guess the facility was in operation until they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, and then immediately the day after that bomb dropped, they closed the facility. So they were actually, like I said, it was munitions that were being built there, so they were thinking that it was atomic bombs being built there. And the speculation is that one of the bombs that was dropped on Hiroshima was built at this site. So really, when you think about it, this building and this area is just ripe for conspiracy theories. So it's not shocking that we have a monster being populated out of this area.
A whole ass monster.
Yeah, we got a whole ass monster. So basically, over the next 3 days after that initial sighting of those couples in their car, there's at least 8 more people that report similar creatures on that same stretch of road. And then in another encounter, there's a man named Newell Partridge, and he claimed that he saw strange patterns appearing on his television screen one night. So as if something is screwing with the frequencies there. And this is followed by a mysterious sound that's just outside of his house. So Newell, a brave fucking man, he goes to investigate. So he takes his flashlight, he's shining it around in the direction of what the noise is coming from. And at that point, he supposedly witnessed 2 large eyes, resembling what he said were bicycle reflectors. So very similar to the size and shape of the eyes from the other accounts. And he says these eyes are just staring back at him. So this story, it kind of remains popular with the locals within this Mothman lore, especially because it's allegedly the reason why Partridge's dog then goes missing. So to this day, a lot of people still believe that the Mothman took Partridge's dog, and it's probably because Mothman was lonely and needed a buddy at his house in the munitions plant.
Definitely. He needed a friend.
Yeah, he did need a friend. He didn't have the pigeons. They didn't want to hang out with him, so he had to steal a puppy. And maybe Partridge was a bad dog owner, so Mothman was a compassionate being, and he was like, I'm going to take this dog and give him a better life.
So basically you're telling me that Mothman is one of those white bitches that will literally hop fences and fight God to save a pit bull?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Okay. In my mind, anyway. Mothman was just doing a rescue mission.
Mm-hmm. He's like, I don't care who sees me.
It's like, fight me, bitch. You won't. I'm the Mothman. But anyway, so after that initial string of sightings, they do slow down a bit. However, over the next year, over 100 people report seeing the Mothman in their area, and almost all of them agree on the same points. So those points are that the monster was large or larger than a big man. So he is tall, and he probably shops at the Big and Tall barn. That's my gathering from this. They also agree that it has wings, but it doesn't have feathers. The way it moves, everyone has said that it moves straight up into the air like a helicopter, and then it would glide through the sky. So it's not running to take off. It just shoots straight up. And also, nobody could make out features of the face aside from the 2 glowing red eyes. So, obviously, this creature just has the townspeople in a frenzy, and some residents would form actually armed hunting parties to go out in search of the monster. So not only that, but it also creates a pretty big media frenzy, and the town quickly just becomes overrun with newspaper outlets trying to break the story of the Mothman. These sightings, they continue until tragedy strikes on December 15th of 1967. So this is 13 months after that initial sighting. And at this point, the town sees, unfortunately, another string of shitty events happen. And on December 15th, the bridge that I spoke of earlier, this is when that bridge collapse happens. So on that day, 31 cars are all plunged into the Ohio River when the Silver Bridge that connects the city with its sister city in Ohio collapses. So 64 people that day, they go into the water. 46 of those people die. And locals say that just days before the event, they spotted Mothman on the bridge. And from this point on, the sightings of Mothman begin to decrease. However, it's this event that kind of puts into motion the myth that the Mothman isn't just a monster, that he is a harbinger of death. So they also begin to kind of believe that he's not there to kill them directly, but that he's there to warn them of like imminent destruction. So if you remember back to like our first string of unfortunate events, that flooding that happened, they start to be like, well, that creature that they were seeing was a Mothman, and he was there to warn them that these floods were going to happen. That also brings us back to Chief Cornstalk. And so people, of course, they begin to associate the Mothman with the curse that was put in place allegedly by Chief Cornstalk. So when it comes to Mothman, like obviously people saw something in the night sky, right? But we don't really know what it was for sure. So there's quite a few theories here. I think we can all assume that just like due to the sheer number of reports that there's potential for there to be some sort of instance of mass hysteria. Like I think we mentioned at one point that that town where there was that like dancing frenzy at one point, and it could be something similar to that where like due to the small size of Point Pleasant, I can definitely see it being an environment where something like that could thrive. Because most of the residents, they either had their own Mothman sighting experience or they knew directly someone that would talk about their own experience. So for people to start like implanting these sightings and stories into their own brain that they've sort of cultivated from all these other accounts, I could see it definitely happening, especially like in a small town environment.
Well, and it might even be something where there's like just a lot of owls or something, because like at night when an owl is flying at you, it's fucking terrifying. And they do also have large eyes. Obviously it's not the size of a man, but it's like the night, like nighttime can play some funky tricks on your eyes where you think like something is much bigger than it is. And also like owls can get to be huge. So
well, and that's actually the next couple theories are bird related. So there's another popular theory that it's just a bird. Like we just mentioned, specifically a sandhill crane. So if you look up a picture of the sandhill crane for a bird, they are pretty tall and large. However, the description doesn't really add up with what the eyewitnesses had seen. So these cranes, they only have a wingspan of about 6.5 feet, and they stand at most about 3 to 4 foot tall. However, they do have red markings around their eyes, but that's kind of where the similarity stops. They also aren't super common to that area. So for that many people to have sightings of this particular bird is kind of unheard of. However, a sister-in-law of one of those original witnesses from the vehicle that we were talking about did claim that several people thought it could be a mutant sandhill crane because they're assuming that it was mutated because all the byproduct from illegally dumped chemicals from that munitions plant had landed in the swampland. And so, like, maybe the chemicals had mutated this crane, I guess, and made it larger or more scary or, like, kind of fucking psychotic and off the rails, so maybe it would chase people. So, another theory, again, bird-related, is that it was a barred owl. So, they have, allegedly, like, the most dramatic, what scientists call it, or not scientists, but like ornithologists, so like bird scientists, they call it a red eye shine just based on like the proteins in this bird's eye. So they're kind of like a larger species of owl, but also if you catch their eyes in the light, they're very large and very red, and they do appear to be glowing. And these ones are actually more native to the area. However, the size still doesn't quite add up with Mothman. It's also worth noting too that the Mothman, as people are describing him, does actually share a resemblance to like when people have sleep paralysis, some of those like sleep paralysis demons of like tall beings with red eyes. Like I feel like that's kind of a common like reoccurring theme in sleep paralysis stories. So
let me tell you real quick. So I could see it being that because I remember when I was working, like, basically I was getting, like, 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night where I was, like, going to school during the day and then working at night and then, like, you know, go to sleep for a few hours, wash, rinse, repeat. There was a time where I was driving home in the middle of the night from work and, like, I was 100% sure that I saw an ostrich in the middle of the road. And I wasn't like, oh, my God, that's the Mothman. I was just like, I am hallucinating because I am so sleep deprived. So I need to go to bed and I need to like not go to school tomorrow, basically. I could see that.
Yeah, and that's what people are claiming too, that it could just be like an embodiment of people's hallucinations based off like their typical fears or like sleep paralysis hallucinations that are just like pulled from their self-conscious or unconscious mind, whatever. And then that coupled with like, imagine you're super tired, you're on this road, you're driving home, you're being chased by a mutant crane. And you also have
an owl.
Yeah, or owl. It's not that hard to believe that your brain would like make this owl or crane out to be a lot scarier than it is, because like it's a dark, spooky road next to like an abandoned munitions plant. Like you could easily build that up in your mind to be bigger than it is.
Well, and depending on what season it is, like owls can be kind of territorial. Like I've had an owl fly directly into my car before because it was like coming at me.
Yeah. Yeah, or like if they were nesting on the side of that road somewhere and those cars were driving by, that I could see them being like, fuck off, get away from my babies. So that's a fairly reasonable theory. And other people then, birds aside, they claim that it was simply a lost weather balloon, which that I think is a dumb theory. So they're saying it's either a weather balloon or an elaborate hoax. And in fact, the locals from that period of time said that there was one particular local teen that did like to dress up in costumes and prank people by jumping out at night and scaring passing vehicles. So that is a very legitimate possible theory. So I don't know who that teen is, but props to you, because if in fact this was you inspired not only a mass panic in your community, but a big pop culture monster and movies. So imagine having that sort of like, you're at your Uncle Terry's wedding or whatever, and this guy goes, you know the Mothman? That's me. Like, the most fascinating man in the room, for sure. So
I don't feel like that teen would be able to like tell people though, because it's like, do you ruin the illusion and be
right.
like, yeah,
that's
it
true.
was me.
That's true.
Also, off the weather balloon theory, could you imagine like, okay, I'm imagining they were drag racing, they maybe weren't sober, that like that it was a weather balloon and it just like got attached to the back of their car, like they ran over it and it like was just dragging behind, and it was like, they're like, it's chasing us,
Yeah.
it's chasing
and eventually
us.
just detaches from their bumper and floats away, and they're like, oh, okay, we're safe.
He
Jesus.
flew away.
God. And
Fucking idiots.
So there is one more piece of pretty damning evidence against the theory of the Mothman being real. And this kind of goes back to that curse that was put on the town. So in 2006, they were actually doing demolition on like an old elementary school. And locals, they came across a play that was written by a local student about the Battle of Point Pleasant, between the natives and the settlers. And in this play, the student had basically made up the story that Chief Cornstalk had put the curse on the town. And so it seems like this play is where that rumor started about Chief Cornstalk's curse. Now, I know that doesn't write off the Mothman sightings, but it definitely, I think, kind of rules out the theory of there being a Native American curse. And also, I think it might just be like a fun game of, is it racist, where these white people are just being like, we're going to say that the Native Americans cursed us. So that's, I think, kind of gets rid of the curse theory, in my opinion. And like, unless though this was already a rumor and then he just wrote it into his play, I don't think they've ever determined. But based off of the documentary I was watching, the historian in the town says that that's really where this curse started. So some teen writing fiction in his play. So we've got a lot of theories, obviously, and we'll likely never really know what happened. That's just kind of the nature of the beast here. But the story of Mothman really kind of blew up and created this huge monster culture around this town. That includes books being written, movies, and the most recognizable of those movies is called Mothman Prophecies, which, after doing this research, I now feel obligated to watch. I've never seen it, but apparently it's pretty good. And the story also created a huge tourism culture in the town of Point Pleasant, where they really embrace the Mothman now. So they have actually this huge Mothman statue that was put up in 2003 after that movie came out. And they have an entire museum dedicated to him. And now they even have like an annual Mothman festival that brings in millions of dollars of tourism money to their downtown area every year. So for the most part, the locals kind of seem to really embrace this. And actually, it seems like most of the locals that live there now don't actually believe in the Mothman, but they do kind of enjoy the kitschy nature of, you know, that Mothman persona that has been put on their town.
He's like a fun little mascot.
He is a fun little mascot, and I think, you know, being from a small town myself, having that huge tourism boost, especially like in kind of, I don't want to be like, oh, American small town downtowns are dying, but really they kind of are. Like as soon as Walmart,
especially after COVID.
Yeah, especially after COVID, and like in the 90s and 80s when Walmart's kind of started coming into all these like small town areas, the fact that they're still able to have a thriving downtown with lots of little shops and businesses is really kind of incredible. And actually, the guy in this documentary said that the 2 days that they have the Mothman Festival, those millions of dollars is more than they make the rest of the year there. So again, back to that teen, like imagine he probably, if he was the one perpetrating these pranks, he really can't come forward because he's going to ruin an entire town's economy if he does.
What if it was just like the mayor, though? What if it wasn't even a teen? He was just like, I gotta build business somehow. If I gotta dress up like Batman,
I'm gonna become a movie monster, and we're gonna just really get this town on the map. It's gonna be popping off for sure. So, Point Pleasant aside, the Mothman actually, he's kind of taken on like a global persona recently too. And so there's actually online theories surrounding him being spotted before the Chernobyl disaster. And even some people allege that he can be seen in the smoke of the towers at 9/11. The most recent sightings of Mothman that are, you know, widely reported actually happened in Chicago in 2017. So there were more than 20 reports of a winged humanoid that was spotted flying around the city from April to July of that year.
There's still reports, though.
Yeah.
Because that's near us. Mm-hmm. So there's, like, especially out at the airport, there's a ton of reports of, like, a humanoid winged figure.
Yeah. So he's still, like, he's out there popping off, doing his thing. And if you actually Google, like Ashlee said, if you Google him, there's still happening, or sightings that are happening kind of, like, all over the world to this day, which kind of begs the question, has Mothman simply just taken a page from, like, Pitbull's playbook and gone Mr. Worldwide, which would explain the recent lack of Point Pleasant sightings and the fact that he's being spotted everywhere else? I don't really know. I hope I never meet him in person. But that is the story and the legend of the Mothman.
He's just a small town boy.
Just a small town moth. Living in a munitions plant.
He took the midnight train going Mr. Worldwide.
There you go, folks. You got a daily dose of monsters and karaoke, so you're welcome.
I feel like every episode is a daily dose of karaoke a little bit.
Maybe instead of an I Love You Jesus or I Love You Moses tribute to Trisha Paytas, I'll do an I Love You Mothman.
Okay, we gotta wait till we get together for that.
Oh yeah.
Because I got that cape.
I'm trying to rewrite the lyrics now because he didn't free the slaves, but he chased the cars.
He warned the people.
And warned the people that your bridge was going to collapse. We love you, Mothman. We'll workshop it. We'll come back with a full version eventually. Maybe. Probably not. But if you dream it, we might do it.
Yeah, comment below.
Comment below. DM us if you have suggestions for lyrics. So write us basically a long DM on Instagram this week with your childhood memories and with your Mothman, I Love You Jesus rewrite lyrics. And with that, I will stop talking about Mothman and allow you now to move on to a more important topic, which is our weekly tarot reading.
So, first card I pulled is Two of Cups, which we saw last week. Again, it's like partnership, collaboration. That's what I feel like this is partnership. Next card I pulled is the Devil, which is like toxicity, negativity, like just a shitty person. So like you have some sort of a partnership right now that is just really toxic for you. I don't know, if it doesn't seem like a romantic one. It seems more of like just a business partnership. The next card I pulled is the Knight of Swords, which that's like one person in this relationship is like very stubborn and determined and kind of overbearing. And then I pulled the Eight of Cups upright, that is like this person is going to just fucking abandon you, or like withdraw from you, or just like leave. So it might not be that bad of a situation because it's not like a super traumatic event. I think that it's just like there's some sort of relationship that's toxic. It's not great. This person's stubborn. It's better if they just like leave. And they will just kind of leave and maybe like ghost you almost. And then I pulled the King of Wands. And that is like, this is like a respectful person. So someone respectful is going to come in behind them. This is also like a leader, like a mature person. Like he's in his life, and it can be a person, a masculine person, or just like a masculine energy that is respectful, mature. It's going to take the place of that other toxic partnership. King of Pentacles upright, which that is like power, influence. So there might even be another person coming in after that, or it could be kind of two sides of the same person. And that's like, also this is kind of about like prosperity, bringing in money. It can be like a boss figure, but this just feels like this person kind of has their shit together. So, like I said, cap it all off. Partnership, toxic, not good for you. That person's stubborn. They need to go. They will go. They'll ghost you. And then someone else will come in, or some other people will come in and take their place that are basically like respectful and prosperous and good. So
that's not bad.
That's the tarot time.
Could that even be interpreted like a job per se that is toxic, and then you'll quit or you'll get fired and then you'll get a better one?
Well, yeah, it can be like, that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like definitely doesn't feel like a romantic relationship. Mm-hmm. It definitely feels like either a friendship or a job relationship. And it doesn't feel like catastrophic. Mm-hmm. The Devil card's bad, but that's more of just like a personality, like toxic personality, not a great person. Just like real negative energy kind of following that. But someone, and it seems like they're going, because they're stubborn, because they're difficult to work with, they're going to leave, and then something better is going to come along.
Okay. Well, that's actually kind of a nice one, in my opinion.
And maybe it's just your Starbucks barista, you know?
They keep fucking up my caramel macchiato, so...
Well, they keep giving me milk instead of almond milk.
Girl, every time, right?
It's like, I can tell.
I can tell because I'm shitting myself later. All right. Anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap it up for us here. So thank you for listening to another episode of Cult Stuff and Chill. We hope you join us again next week. As always, our socials will be in the description of the podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the box below. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. If we have a social media, follow us on our socials. Yeah, it'll be on Linktree. You'll find it. And once again, issuing the sentiment, fuck LinkedIn. And we will be back again next week with more creepy crawlies and murderies and stabbies and culties and bad mensies.
Yeah, fuck men, fuck LinkedIn.
Fuck men, fuck LinkedIn. Beware the Mothman. All right. Bye, friends. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.